Hello and welcome to the Death Row and Executions channel. My name is Paco Rivera. You can also follow me on Facebook for updates and more Death Row news. There will be a link to my Facebook in the description below. Also, check out my other channel here on YouTube called The Maximum Sentence, where I cover a recent crime and conviction. There will also be a link for that. On death row at the Oklahoma State Penitentiary is this man, Kendrick Antonio Simpson. Simpson was born in 1980, so he is currently 45 years old. And if Oklahoma carries out the planned execution of Kendrick Simpson this year, he won't see his 46th birthday in October. Simpson has been on death row since the year 2007, so about 19 years, for a crime that he committed the year before, in 2006. Now, Simpson's attorneys and his supporters are arguing that Simpson should not have been sentenced to death for two reasons. One, because 2 years before he committed the murder, he was the victim of a shooting himself that happened in New Orleans, Louisiana, that resulted in him having been diagnosed with severe PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And two, because he was inappropriately and indecently abused when he was very young, though there is no proof of that. They also want to point out that Simpson suffered great horrors during Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans, where he grew up, and he had to evacuate from that area because of all the destruction that hurricane had caused. The Attorney General in Oklahoma responded to those claims from Simpson's supporters by reminding everyone that, quote, Kendrick Simpson hunted his victims, executed them without hesitation, and then boasted about what he had done. The families left behind have endured unimaginable pain, and nothing in Simpson's decades on death row has shown that he deserves the mercy he refused to give to others. What is mind-boggling about this case is that the entire incident began over an argument about a baseball cap. A baseball cap that would get two people killed. So, Kendrick Simpson and two friends that were with him, two friends that, along with Simpson, had fled from the destroyed New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, Jonathan Dalton and Latongo Robertson, were all charged with the murders of the two men. Only Simpson was sentenced to death, however. I'll discuss the sentences of his accomplices a bit later. On the night of January 15th, 2006, Kendrick Simpson, who was 25 years old at the time, along with 20-year-old Jonathan Dalton and Latongo Robertson, who was 31, went to Fritzy's Music Hall, a hip-hop club in Oklahoma City. They all went in Dalton's car. Right before going to the club, however, the youngest of the trio, Jonathan Dalton, took Kendrick Simpson to his house so that he could change clothes, and Simpson also got his assault rifle and took it to Dalton's Monte Carlo and placed the rifle in the trunk, which could be accessed from the back seat. Why the need to take an assault rifle with him on a night out? I don't know. They all arrived at Fritz's Music Hall Hip Hop Club sometime after midnight, now January 16th, a Saturday night, or early Sunday morning, however you want to look at it. And they had drinks, and they were having a good time, apparently. However, at one point, Kendrick Simpson was walking through the club and walked past a table where there were three young men seated: London Johnson, Anthony Jones, and Glen Palmer. Two of these three men, Anthony and Glen, would later end up dead. According to reports from the survivor, London Johnson, one of the three men at the table had said something derogatory to Simpson as he was walking by about the Chicago Cubs baseball cap that Simpson was wearing. Now, this had apparently infuriated Kendrick Simpson, and he continued back to the table where his buddies were seated and told them that some guys just said, quote, some crap, unquote, about his baseball cap. According to London Johnson, Kendrick Simpson went back to their table, looked at them, and said, quote, I'm going to chop you up, and then walked away. Now, here's where things get a bit strange. It had appeared to London Johnson that things were settling down because Kendrick Simpson later returned to the table, extended his hand in a polite gesture, like to shake someone's hand, and said, we cool. But London's friend, Glen Palmer, possibly still not too happy about the threat that Simpson had made earlier, I'm going to chop you up, he got up and punched Simpson in the mouth, causing Simpson to fall to the floor. Remember, Glen Palmer is one of the two men who will soon be dead. Well, Kendrick Simpson got up, returned to his table, and told his buddies, Dalton and Robertson, that they were leaving. The trio went back to Jonathan Dalton's Monte Carlo, and they later drove to a convenience store, a 7-Eleven located at Northwest 23rd Street and Portland Avenue in Oklahoma City. And in a classic case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time for the eventual victims, at one point, while the trio were sitting in the Monte Carlo, they spotted the three men from the table in a Chevy Caprice pulling into that same parking lot. They recognized Glen as the man who had punched Simpson at the club. If some of these guys were telling the truth during later confessions, the youngest, 20-year-old Jonathan Dalton had told Kendrick Simpson to just chill out, apparently trying to persuade Simpson to just forget about it. But Simpson was still furious and wanted revenge against Glen Palmer, the man who had hit him. When Glen Palmer, who was actually driving the Caprice, drove away onto 23rd Street and later merged onto I-44, Simpson ordered Jonathan Dalton to follow them. Kendrick Simpson was sitting in the front passenger seat beside the driver Dalton, and he instructed Latongo Robertson in the back seat to reach behind the backrest and hand him his assault rifle from the trunk. According to reports later given by these guys, so we don't know how accurate this is, Robertson has stated that he had hesitated, and that caused Simpson to yell at him that if he had to go get the gun himself, there was going to be trouble in that car. That's taken kind of from a quote from at least one of them later. So Robertson reached through the back seat into the trunk and retrieved the gun for Simpson. Dalton continued to follow the Chevy Caprice driven by Glen Palmer as it exited the interstate onto Pennsylvania Avenue. Dalton pulled up beside the Monte Carlo as it was driven on Pennsylvania Avenue, and Simpson pointed the assault rifle at them and began shooting. The Caprice ran into a utility pole and then hit a fence before coming to a stop. London Johnson, who had been in the back seat, he dropped to the floor as shots were fired into the front seats, where driver Glen Palmer and Anthony Jones were seated. He was not hit. The Monte Carlo had fled. London would say that he tried giving Glen and Anthony CPR, but they were dead. London flagged down a car, and paramedics and authorities soon arrived on the scene. London was able to describe the car that had fled. It wouldn't be long before authorities had pieced together the case from what happened earlier that night, and all three men, Kendrick Simpson, Jonathan Dalton, and Latongo Robertson, were arrested and charged with the double murder. According to the case file, most of the events of what happened that night were confessed by Jonathan Dalton and Latongo Robertson. Kendrick Simpson at first denied ever shooting a gun and would later say that he shot at the car because his life was in danger after having been threatened by the victims. Both Latongo Robertson and Jonathan Dalton were sentenced in the year 2007 to 20 years in prison. They have since been released. Kendrick Simpson was convicted and sentenced to death and is scheduled to be executed in Oklahoma this year on February 12th. The victim, Glen Palmer, was 20 years old. Anthony Jones was 22 years old when he was killed. Not much else is known about the victims in this case. Please go ahead and hit the subscribe button for more death row and upcoming execution stories so that you're alerted when the next one comes out. You can also follow me on Facebook for updates and more death row news. There will be a link to my Facebook in the description below. My name is Paco Rivera. Thank you for watching. Take care and bye for now.